Yes, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football update channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Wednesday morning, the 6th of May, 2026. It's 37 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. here in Kampala, Uganda. Apologies, I'm a bit late because I was shooting another episode for the Football Tribe UG channel. So essentially, I was doing Football Tribe UG work. But that not being the excuse, I'm glad that we are back for yet another morning to discuss the latest from the world of football. It's interesting that we find ourselves in the position that we are. First of all, glad that we are alive, but more importantly, I really want to send my sincere thanks to all of you that managed to catch the conversation last night. It was a pleasure having you on. People like Ramco, thank you so much. Samantha from Netherlands, thank you so much for joining the broadcast. Reluctant Gamer, it was a pleasure seeing you. Raymond Kangumba, you did chip in quite briefly, but nonetheless, we do appreciate you for the time you dedicated to be part of the broadcast. Who else? There's a couple of other people whose names do not come easily off head, but thank you so much for having been part of last night's podcast. Always a pleasure to see you guys around. Ash, for the Tottenham Hotspur fan, and Adash, you also chipped in. Thank you all for choosing to be part of the Football Tribe UG channel. You'll allow me to have our audience tested before we proceed any further. But this morning, we'll be talking about what we saw last night, but also more importantly, we'll be looking at the preview of the UEFA Champions League semi-final fixture that's going to be between Bayern Munich and PSG going into to today. It's the second fixture. We need to determine who comes through second as the other UEFA Champions League finalists in the road to Budapest. Arsenal made it. They have done it in spectacular style. 14 games played thus far. They are yet to lose a game of football. They've been impressive. A lot of people, or a lot was said prior to that game or going into that game in regards to what the expectations lay forward for the game, how it would suffice. But safe to say that we did not watch a boring game of football. I thought it was an enjoyable game of football. Of course, it was nail-biting. It was very nervous. It was very there's a lot of anxiety depending on wherever it is that you are seated watching the game. For those of you that are just joining us, welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is my name, and I come to you live from Kampala, Uganda. It's 9:40 a.m. here, so it's a pleasure to have you. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it is your first time here. It is a football channel. We get to talk about the latest stuff from the world of football. And this morning, we are digesting what happened last night in the UEFA Champions League, as well as what we expect to come subsequently today in the same competition in the reverse fixture between Bayern Munich and PSG. So for those of you that enjoy the sport, grab a seat, grab your cup of coffee, grab your bottle of water, whatever it is, grab a snack, and let's enjoy the conversation. Leave me a comment down in the comment section, and I'll be reading each and every one of your comments, your submissions as we go along. So, yesterday, like I said, people expected some haram football, football that was not end-to-end. And it is safe to say it wasn't so much end-to-end. It felt more like a bit one-sided in some moments, or for a better part of it, that one team focused more on defending and the other and allowed the other to attack them. But also, it's a kind of game where you understand the team deploying that kind of strategy. Pedri joins us this morning. He says, "Thank you for eliminating Atletico de Madrid. Snow, I hope you lose." Thank you, Pedri. At least you acknowledge one thing. And from Bayern or PSG, I mean, it's hard to choose. Both are very, very good teams. But if I had to be pressed, I'd go with PSG all day long. I mean, Bayern Munich, there's a reason as why they are 6-time champions of the competition. There's a good reason for that. So, but in an ideal world, you wouldn't wish for any of them, really, because they're both such strong teams. They are both such strong teams, very impressive teams. there's a clip of Rafinha that has been making the rounds of how, in the aftermath of Atletico de Madrid knocking out Barcelona at the quarterfinals of the same competition, he was telling them that you're going home at the next round. That's been making, the trends unready. But it is what it is. That's football banter. That's one thing was bound to happen, or either Arsenal are going to be knocked out, or Atletico de Madrid were going to be knocked out. Good enough, fortunately enough, it was Arsenal. Now, the game in itself, like I said, a lot of people had expected a boring game, a game where both teams sat back, not wanting to attack, being too cautious not to lose, being too cautious not to concede, and not wanting to concede opportunities, and things like that. And for a good part, it felt like, and for part of it, it felt that way, because the way Atletico de Madrid set up was literally to retreat themselves back into a back five. And it served their purpose well. It really, really served their purpose well, because the goal doesn't come until the late stages of the first half, that is in the 45th minute, literally at the tail end of the half, through Bukayo Saka. But the way they approached the game was that you had, what you had was Matteo Lugeri, David Hanko, Robin Lee Nomad, and Mark Pebble, with Marcos Llorente constantly tucking in back in, or sometimes Briano Simeone, to try and form that back five. And they defended with 10 players behind the ball when they needed to, and they did it effectively well, because they constantly denied Arsenal the spaces to go in behind. When Arsenal moved the ball sideways, they committed numbers to whatever wing it was. When they came centrally, they committed numbers in front of their goal. When they moved left to right, they kept a very composed structure. They kept a very compact structure, and they were really, really good at what they were doing. You see, for people that appreciate the game, you will know that there are two elements to the game. There's the element of the attacking, there's the element of defending, or call it the art of defending. Of course, some people love the attacking part of the game more than they do the defending part of the game, and the reverse is true. So for those that love the defensive part of it, looked at that Atletico Madrid structure, very compact, very composed. Arsenal could hardly string passes in between. They could hardly find the gaps to, occupy. They really, really appreciated it for what it is. But then also for those that love the attacking football sort of the game, also had something to look to, because Arsenal kept coming back, to try and attack. But more importantly, those people that love attacking football, they would have loved the first leg between Bayern Munich and PSG. Really, the defense, those that love defending would have thought, oh, that was some really, really shitty defending, from both teams in terms of the collectiveness of the two teams. But that's the nature of the sport, First of all, right from the onset, I was a bit surprised with the confidence that Mikel Arteta went into this game with, playing Miles Lewis-Kelly at the heart of midfield. First and foremost, he's been brought up through the Arsenal Academy as a midfielder. So it is not a surprise that he is playing in midfield. But predominantly last season, he was known for playing at left back. That notwithstanding, particularly this season, he's not played a lot of games, if we're being honest. In comparison to last season, he's not played a lot of games. He's coming at the tail end of the season, where we've been crying and literally hammering it time and again to Mikel Arteta that, look, as much as you love Martin Zubimendi, he's fatigued, he's tired, he's no longer giving you what he was giving you at the start of the season. And you must see that. You must acknowledge that, And while we thought it through, the most unlikely change that we did not see coming was that Miles Lewis-Kelly was the one going to be thrown into that midfield. For a club that, for example, has an experienced Christian Norgard to their bench, he was one of the first names that you'd think of. But more importantly, you'd think, given the availability of their captain in Martin Odegaard, he could be the guy that gets tossed into that midfield. But no, he decided to go otherwise. Hi, Chips. Good to have you back. You say, hi, Robert. How are you doing tonight? Well, it's a morning for me, but good evening to you. How are you doing? over that side. Chipes does join us from Mexico. I hope you're doing good. Yes, I'm all right. How about yourself? How have you been? I think we've missed you for the last 2 or 3 broadcasts. Correct me if if I stand wrong on that one, but we did miss you. Or particularly, personally, I did miss your chats on here. I hope you're doing well. So, TT Vision says, brother, what happened with Arsenal lately? Everything has changed. I'm here to. So, okay. Now, TT says, what happened with Arsenal lately? Everything has changed. I think there's been an internal acknowledgement about how things have been going. And Declan Rice said this post-match that they know they have not been playing at their best. They know that they had a moment, particularly when you go back to the month of April and maybe a little backwards in March, where things were not going their way, where they looked lethargic or sluggish in their play, where they looked not sharp. They did not play with a lot of energy. Yes, a lot of those things did happen, Meanwhile, a colleague of mine, Alex. Hi, Alex. Good morning. I know he's there watching. He says, I'm here for the post-match analysis for the Arsenal versus Atletico all day. So, I think we've come from a phase where Arsenal have been very, very conservative in their play, and it's been critiqued to the great extent that you would think of it in the world of football. And we've talked about how Arsenal have approached games with playing with a lot of caution, taking risks at the back in terms of playing out of the back or playing that ball between the center backs, the full backs, and maybe the goalkeeper and the holding midfielders. And yet they cannot convert the same to be played in the offense. We've asked those questions. We've asked why Arsenal were not very fluid in their attacks. And perhaps, like I kept saying, maybe the painful part for those that were asking for that type of football were because they've seen the same Arsenal under the same manager, Mikel Arteta, play that kind of football. That when you go back right from the 2021-2022 Premier League campaign and onwards until the end of the 2023-2024 campaign, because when you go back to last season, it was more of what we have seen this season. And my argument for it was that I gave Mikel Arteta the benefit of doubt to know that he's the guy that played the other type of football, but he's also the guy that is playing this type of football. That it is for a good reason. That it's more like saying, I've done this and it hasn't achieved me the desired result. Maybe I need to change to start doing this to see if it gets me the desired result. You know the old adage, the old English adage, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. Nonetheless, to his discredit, I still thought he could still try to find a balance between both worlds, where you can be conservative, where you can be a bit cautious, but also play the very fluid and attacking sort of game. How? If you're playing against Burnley, if you're playing against a West Ham, if you're playing against a Crystal Palace, not that they are weak opponents, but they are weaker in comparison to others sometimes. Why not play with a single pivot where you have either Martin Zubimendi or Declan Rice sitting in your hole, and then you have the rest of the players around him are very attacking players. You remember when he tried this out in the West Ham game, that they won by 2-0 before Martin Odegaard went off injured for that injury after colliding with Somerville. It was that he played with Declan Rice in the pivot. Martin Zubimendi was on the bench. Martin Odegaard was in there with Ebeleche Eze. So he looked to test that out. So obviously, Odegaard goes off after I think about 30 minutes or slightly less. And we had yet to see the best of it because it was the first time the partnership were playing. So a lot of people were hoping to see what good comes of that. So, but he constantly never did that. He never retreated to that. He continuously played the double pivot of Martin Zubimendi and Declan Rice. Sometimes there appeared to be a clash of roles between the two players, but overall, I thought they went about their business really, really well because you ought to be a bit more analytical to see it for what it is, for what it is meant for, than for what you're not seeing. And maybe that's where people like me and those above me in terms of this, tactical analysis are coming to help you understand the perspective of it. Now, the thing about those two, Martin Zubimendi and Declan Rice, both can play as a 6, both can play as an 8, And if you look at it in comparison to the partnership between Miles Lewis-Kelly and Declan Rice, how they've gone about it, that's when you sort of look back to the Martin Zubimendi role and say, oh, because when you observe Declan Rice, go back to the weekend game against Fulham and subsequent to that yesterday, he was given the man of the match performance, and yeah, he did deserve it. But you could see that there's a certain level of weight lifted off his shoulder in terms of the amount of work that he has to do. And I'm a bit surprised that, because for you to be less committal or less busy, as Declan Rice has proved in the last 2 games, is that you must have a certain level of trust in your partner in midfield to know that they are going to take care of business if you go forward or if they go forward. There has to be that level of trust, between Martin Zubimendi and Declan Rice. There's no void in trust. They trusted each other that if you go forward, I'm going to stay. If you move here, I'm going to move there. That trust was there. Why? Because they are both experienced players at that level. But then we are talking about Miles Lewis-Kelly, 19 years of age or so, and he's not largely played in that role. So you must think to yourself, because I observed this right from the weekend. When they start the game, it's Declan Rice at the best of the pivot, and Miles Lewis-Kelly is playing in the number 8 role. As soon as Arsenal score that goal through Victor Gyökeres and they go forward, it appears that like they had switched roles, and then constantly Miles Lewis-Kelly was the one tucking in between the 2 centre backs during the build-up phase of play, and I kept arguing against it because why? I know some of the weaknesses of Miles Lewis-Kelly is that he's prone to that bad decision. He's prone to a clumsy challenge, and he has this thing that I largely remember about Alexander Song-Bilong in that Arsenal midfield, where as soon as he won the ball or he sort of got custody of the ball, he would sort of make his body bigger to protect the ball, more like a male turkey kind of thing. You've seen a male turkey trying to bulge out its wings to, make itself bigger than it actually is. So he had that thing. So even Miles Lewis-Kelly has that thing about him that when he wins the ball or when he gets the ball in his strides, and let's say he has a player coming on to, close him down, he does that. And sometimes it has not gone his way, or in my personal observation. Sometimes he's gotten away with it by winning a foul or something. So I always thought, and when you look at his pace in terms of ball recovery, let's say if he's been beaten for pace, his speed for recovery is a bit slower compared to Declan Rice. So I'm more comfortable with Declan Rice, the one staying in the pivot, and Miles Lewis-Kelly going about his business all over the pitch. So they sort of reversed the roles, or they interchanged those roles during the course of the game, and that was my only reservation, but it came out perfectly well. Titi says Arteta took long to make this change. Should have realized after Bournemouth, but it's okay. We are in it. It's in our hands now. Now again, I want to give him the benefit of doubt, because even when I criticize Mikel Arteta to great length, the one thing I know for a fact is that he spends more time with these players. He knows them better than we can ever do. He knows how they go about training. He knows what the risks are. And he said this in the aftermath of that Fulham game. He said, if I played him and we had lost, the whole world will be asking for my head on the spike. Those were not his words, but I mean that literally. Why? Because everybody will be questioning, why do you play a young kid in this position where he's not played all throughout the season? Why take that risk now? You get the point. Because it's easy for us to argue the reverse when something doesn't work out, But and I remember he was a bit casual about it. He says, maybe I don't know anything about football. He tried to say something in that realm. So I must commend him for taking the decision when he takes it. But also, I understand where you're coming from, because I know for a fact that Mikel Arteta is a stubborn guy. He's one guy that if he's comfortable with something or he's convinced about something, he's not going to change it. He's not going to change it. He would rather die on that hill. Remember when Kai Havertz first joined Arsenal back in 2023, in the summer of 2023? Regardless of his performances, he constantly played him. Why? Because in his heart of hearts, he was convinced that Kai Havertz was capable of pulling off the things that he needed him to pull off. Initially, he brings him as a midfielder, remember, and he played him in that midfield, but it was not working out. Kai Havertz was struggling. Game in, game out, he was struggling, So he was struggling. But eventually, I don't remember exactly what happened. Was it an injury to Gabriel Jesus and he gets moved into that striking role of a bit of a false nine, and things started to fall in place for him? You remember his first goal came as a courtesy penalty when they beat up against Bournemouth at the Vitality Stadium, when he was donning that a yellow kit that looked like a reflector jacket for most of it. So really, you have to look at it in that sense. So equally for Martin Zubimendi, for a player that is 27, he's experienced. He's a Spanish international. I like your reference of a Turkey to Maslow Kelly style of play. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Alex. So basically, Arteta is a bit of a stubborn guy. We've seen it many times when we think he needs to make a change and he hasn't made it. I said this, if Arsenal at lose, let's say, the Premier League title, part of my references as reasons for losing it would be going back to the game against Sunderland, where he drew 2-2. He was leading that game by 2-1. But we could vividly see that he had tired legs in that midfield. And yet he still chose not to make a substitution when he had a Christian Nogard on the bench. And we thought you can bring him on the final 15, 20 minutes to help you see out the game. But he never took that decision. And it burnt his fingers. Many a times he's made those decisions that have burnt his fingers. Going into yesterday's game, I was one of the people that thought Ben White needed to be swapped out because he had a poor game over the weekend. In fact, watching Ben White start over the weekend, my anticipation was that Christian Mosquera was going to start in this subsequent game. Chipe says, I'm ready, going to sleep. Robert, I'll see you tomorrow. It's been a pleasure, Chipes. For people that don't know, Chipes is from Mexico. Therefore, it's nighttime over there for him. So he needs to go to bed. But much appreciated. I hope you have a good day. Thank you. Much appreciated for your time spent with us. Thank you. So I thought, given the kind of day he had in office over the weekend against Fulham, I thought Ben White should not be starting that game. But he decided otherwise, Sasa, hi Sasa. He decided otherwise because, like I say, he knows those players better than I do. And guess what? Ben White gave us the kind of performance worthy of a player of his stature. Somebody said he reminded us of the Ben White of the 2022-2023 campaign and the subsequent season, 2023-2024. He was really, really brilliant. The way he stormed, he sort of roamed that channel at the right wing was really impressive. Going forward, finding the passes, the through passes for Bukayo Saka, and you remember they would form that bit of a triangle between Bukayo Saka and Ben White, as well as Martin Odegaard. We've constantly spoken about Arsenal's over-reliance of that wing in itself. So you ought to, I give him the credit for sticking with him. And it paid off. He played really, really well. He hardly placed a foot wrong. You remember the first leg, he conceded a penalty. He nearly conceded another. Had it not been for Ademola Lookman to stay on his feet, it could have gone horribly wrong for him. In fact, during the preview, I was listening into a forum somewhere where somebody said he did not want to see Ben White within 10 miles of that starting 11. That is how overly critical he had been of Ben White's performance. But also, it was an honest view that he was not playing well. So I thought Christian Mosquera was going to come in and play, but he stuck with Ben White, and he had a very, very good game. Then Bukayo Saka, Starboy. If there's any player that deserved the moment of guiding Arsenal to the final, I think is Bukayo Saka. Hell and graduate, he scores the goal that decides the tie. But also, we're talking about a player that is playing through injury. A lot of people do not know this, but Arsenal have had to be very cautious with him. That's why he was among the early withdrawals. And I'm sure a lot of Arsenal fans would have been thinking to themselves, why is he making that change at the time when he made it? They have to manage his minutes. It's due to injury. He has an Achilles tendinopathy, issue with his Achilles, and they do not want to risk him suffering the kind of Achilles injury like that Hugo Ekitike suffered, because he's now going to be out of action for the next, at the very least, 8 to 10 months or even 12. So they do not want to risk that. So they've had to manage his game time, but also prior to that, his recovery. But then also you ought to remember, Starboy is not just Starboy for Arsenal. He's also a very critical player for the England national team, and we have the World Cup coming. So they have to manage his game time because he is still in the process of recovery. And Thierry Henry was speaking yesterday, and he said he had a conversation with him, and he told him, yes, I'm playing through injury, but I at least have to be on the bench for the West Ham game. Why? He's desperate to play to help his team get things over the line. But also, injuries are injuries. You can never know when it's going to go sour for him, but you can only hope against hope that it does not come to that. But they've had to manage him. So, and particularly coming into the Fulham game, give the sort of performance that he gave for 45 minutes before he was withdrawn. And then by extension yesterday, you ought to give him his flowers. He's the kind of guy that I've been really, really critical of this season because he's not had a brilliant season. He's underperformed by measure of his own standards. He set those standards, and that's why we constantly expect better of him, But yet, again, yesterday, he rose to the occasion. Then Victor Gyökeres. Take comparison from how he played over the weekend and how he played yesterday. Yesterday, he did not score. But these last two games, it looks like finally Arsenal have cracked the code of how to play into his strength, of how to play to the strength of Victor Gyökeres. They find him much quicker in the spaces. His hold-up play looks even more impressive than it's ever been. And he looks a bit... he looks like he's a little bit more enjoying himself a little more, why? Because they're playing those balls early, and they seem to have grown in confidence that you can pass him the ball and he will do the work for you, So it may not always come out as the desired result, but you're going to see the effort and you'll appreciate it for what it is. Look at one of the moments that epitomizes that is go back to the Pierre Hincapié cross that he puts for him in the second half. As soon as Pierre Hincapié receives that ball from Leandro Trossard, I think, he makes the cross straight away into the box and he's lashing onto it. Unfortunately, he could not find the target. But that quick play, trying to make the decision early, not to take an extra touch on the ball, is the difference. I keep saying, when you play against teams that are very compact and are not going to accommodate you a lot of spaces, sometimes all you need is to take that shot a microsecond early. You remember that goal scored by Ebelechi Eze against Bayer Leverkusen at the round of 16. As soon as he receives that ball, he's going bang. Why? Because he knows if he takes an extra touch, somebody is going to close in that space. So it was really, really brilliant to watch. Then you go back to Ben White, that through ball that he plays into Bukayo Saka for him to put in the cross in the area. I think, who was it? Victor Gyökeres tried to get to it, but could not. But you could see a lot of things have improved overall. But if I were to be nitpicking, there's an Arsenal player that looks so good on the ball, especially when they are going in offensively, but looks like a bit of a loose cannon. That is Ricardo Carafiori. When he goes about his defensive duties, I feel naturally he's a volatile player. he's for lack of a better comparison, allow me pick on the example of Diego Costa. He looks like a guy that you can easily rattle. You know, do you remember that game between Arsenal and Chelsea in the finals of the 2017 FA Cup? You remember how Diego Costa tried to rattle Rob Holding, and he had been drilled so well by Arsene Wenger that he expected everything that came to him from from Diego Costa. And then the same thing, I think, tried to happen with Bernard Erling Haaland. But the other is a better example of 2017 FA Cup final. So, but it looks like Ricardo Calafiori does not have that composure. He's the kind of guy that he's more likely to throw a punch if you rub him the wrong way, even in the middle of a game. That is quite evident in what appears his revengeful tackle on Antoine Griezmann, because that stamp on the foot, like I said earlier on, it could have easily been a penalty on another day with another match official if he does not give the other to be a foul on Gabriel Magalhaes prior to that moment. So he does look very, very good going forward. And again, it spoke to us. Yesterday's game in-game management from Mikel Arteta, I thought, was excellent with the sort of changes that he made. He knew that bringing on Martin Odegaard was going to give Arsenal a bit of more control on the ball, withdrawing Bukayo Saka for Noni Madueke. I've explained that. It's precaution for the injury. But Ricardo Calafiori for Piero Hincapié, he knows that Piero Hincapié is the better defender between the two guys. But Calafiori is very good going forward. And we saw him over the weekend when he even went on to score that goal that unfortunately was ruled out for offside. Then for Maz Luis Kelly being withdrawn for Martin Zubimendi, it just felt like the right time. Although he appeared to have gone down through a bit of an injury. He needed a bit of treatment. And then Gabriel Martinelli coming on for Leandro Trossard. Again, that was more of a natural change. Really, on the other side, I've seen a lot of people trying to criticize Diego Simeone for some of the substitutions that he made. For example, withdrawing Julian Alvarez for Thiago Almada. I then maybe Ademola Lookman for Molina. I wouldn't critique him on that. Julian Alvarez has been playing through injury, and it was there for the world to see. If there was even in their last training, he first trained alone just to test out his ankle before he joined the rest of the teammates. And even when he joined them, according to reports, literally there was no major contact allowed between other players and him, because they know he's not fully fit, and you could see him limp through parts of the game. So that was only bound to happen. But then also Alexander Soloth, there's a moment that he had a chance at goal, but he never took that. He sort of failed to get the ball under his feet, and then the Arsenal guys did well to recover. So beautiful game beautiful game to watch. I thought Eberechi Eze did okay in a way, not a stellar performance, but he did just enough to help the team get by. And David Raya, I mean, give him his flowers. I think he now has 8 clean sheets in this season's UEFA Champions League. They've only conceded 6 goals thus far. 4 during the league phase, 1 against Bayern Munich, 1 against Inter, 2 against Karate Almaty, and then in the knockout phase, 1 against Bayer Leverkusen and the other against Atletico de Madrid. So you can see it's not by accident, by the way. It's not by accident. And that defensive solidity could possibly be what separates both worlds when we go to the final in Budapest, Hungary. You never know. It's been Arsenal's strength going through this season of the UEFA Champions League, similar to what we saw back in 2006 when they reached the finals. Like I said, Jens Zeleman did not concede a single goal until when he gets that red card in the 18th minute. It was Manuel Almunia that conceded the 2 goals that they did concede in the throughout the competition. So you ought to commend what they've been able to do, but that is history in the making for Mikel Arteta, guiding Arsenal to their first final in 20 years and the second in their 140-year history in as far as the Champions League is concerned. When you go back to, I think, the days of the European Cup, they never played any final. That is before it transitioned to the UEFA Champions League. But they did play one in the Cup Winners' Cup. That was when they beat Parma in '94. Then in 2000, they lost to Galatasaray on penalties. That was the UEFA Cup final. UEFA Cup is the Europa League of today. Then when you go back to the 1970, you will find the Intercity Fairs Cup when they beat Anderlecht. That is the last trophy Newcastle had won prior to winning the Carabao Cup last year. So, and then of course they also played in the finals of the 2019 Europa League final when they lost to Chelsea in Azerbaijan, Baku by 4-1. One of those games that Arsenal fans do not want to be reminded of because it was such a horrendous performance from their team as they got obliterated by Mauricio Sarri's Chelsea. Anyways, guys, 30 minutes of the review from the Arsenal game is worth every second. Good morning, Mr. Milton from London. Always a pleasure to see you around. Now, allow us to move on to today's game. Yes, another game that is indicative of a final before the final. Somebody wanted to describe it as total football. After the first leg, I said that is not the nature of total football. Total football is where you strike the perfect balance between your attacking side of the game and your defensive part of the game, because you cannot be very good at one part of the game and not the other, and then you call it total football. No, that's not the case. So, at least in my humble opinion or description of things, 5-4. I said this, that PSG's in-game management was poor, because once they went 5-2 up, that was the time to change things, to play a bit of a more controlled game. And somebody wanted to argue that, no, there is no way they could do that against Bayern Munich. Go back to the game they played against Arsenal, winning that one by 0-0 at the Emirates Stadium. It was a very controlled game. Go back to their 2-1 victory against the same side in the reverse fixture. Go back to their 1-0 victory against Liverpool at the round of 16 last season. Go back to their game against Chelsea, 5-2 in the first leg. We're talking about controlled performances. We're talking about a team that is very good at so many things. If you want them to raise the tempo of the game, they'll raise the tempo of the game. If you want them to cool it down, they will cool it down, because they have the tools at their disposal that have those capabilities. When you have Vitinha, Joao Neves in that midfield with Warren Zaire-Emery or Fabian Ruiz, those are players capable of giving you control. However, the downside for PSG this time around is that they are going to be without their right back in Achraf Hakimi because he's absent through injury. So you could see Essene Mayuru playing down that right flank. So, but of course, both sides have their fair share of injuries. That notwithstanding, we should expect, I think, more of the same of what we saw in the first leg, albeit I am not yet sold on the idea that it could be another 5-4 kind of scoreline. I think both teams are going to look at their discipline when it comes to the defensive part of the game, and they will look to work on that, because, 5-4 is usually a penalty scoreline. It's usually a penalty scoreline. You do not get so many games ending as such. In the Premier League, I think there's only been one game thus far this season that ended with that kind of scoreline. That was the game between Manchester City and Fulham. So ordinarily, it's not a very an everyday scoreline. It is okay to see teams getting beat 5-0. That means one side is stronger. But 5-4, the most at times you'll have is a 3-2, a 4-3 kind of thing, But we had a 5-4. And in fact, when you reflect back on the game, beautiful as it was, you may even struggle to sometimes remember the order of the goals. 9 goals in a single-legged tie of the semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League. That was happening for the first time since 1960 in the European Cup, when Rangers got beat by Eintracht Frankfurt 6-3 before, when they advanced to the final and lost to Real Madrid's Alfredo Di Stefano by 7-3. So you can see that it's not an everyday thing, You'll have games where there's so many goals scored, but usually that's because it's sort of one-sided game. You remember, was it Manchester United that beat AC Roma 7-1 at one time? So we should expect a game that is very fluid, both teams going for it, but I have a feeling that they may be a little cautious this time around as opposed to just opening up, because they know that when it comes to the attacking phase of play, they are both very good at it. Now, you cannot play a game just looking to outscore your opponent. Not really. This is not basketball. This is not volleyball. This is not netball. Football is not built for those kinds of scoreline. Imagine a game where it ends 7-6 or 7-5 in open play, in normal time. What would you think about that? It can't be that. Unfortunately for these guys, Bayern Munich cannot afford a draw. They must win. There's no way around to it. They must win. So in a way, they have to open up to try and win the game because they are a goal down. PSG on the other side will know the importance of scoring that first goal. You remember what they did against Chelsea? They came in this reverse fixture with their, was it 5-3 lead or 5-2? They knew what it was. They knew that they were in a strong position. But what they look to do is to dent any hopes Chelsea may have had of a comeback. So I think they'll be looking to the same. Go back to PSG recently. They played at Liverpool, especially in the reverse fixture, the game that they won by 2-0. Liverpool were much the better side. They had everything going for them apart from putting the ball in the back of the net. But how did that happen? Matej Safanov had to be brilliant in that PSG goal. But more importantly, PSG defended really, really well. They were very compact when they needed. So that's why I know for a fact they are capable of having that part of the game to themselves. So if Bayern Munich do not have it in their armor, they could struggle. We could see a PSG side that sort of comes into the game, initially sits back and defends this game, and then look to capitalize on those quick transitions or counterattacks. That's how they conceded through Ousmane Dembele in that fixture. Quick transitions or counterattacks. But they remain very composed. So I have an anticipation that this fixture may not be very different from the sort of strategy that PSG took away to Liverpool. Yes, the opponents are different, their attacking capabilities are different, but it must be controlled. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 3-2 sort of result. Okay, let me read some of the comments. Milton said the second leg of the semi-final should see a tremendous battle and challenge for Bayern Munich. Okay, and then Bruhid or DK, as we normally call him, he says, "Hello, man, I'm back after a week. Always a pleasure to see my people back." There are people I think about and wonder what's happened to them. People like Safa Ali, people like Pressing Bossi, people like, what's he called? Yuris. He's of Indian descent, but a South African, I've missed some of those guys. The Yellow Dayak and a couple of other guys that used to be regular suspects on the channel. But it's always a pleasure to see you, people like you back, DK. Okay, I have exams, so I do not get much time to come online. Sometimes I start as much. I've always said people that are regulars on this channel usually miss for a few reasons. Either they are caught up with work, majority of them with school, others, it's a family emergency, something like that. There's a time, I think the Yellow Dayak, they had floods in Indonesia, and then on another time he was harvesting his palm oil. Anyways, that aside, and back to the game. So how do we expect both teams to line up? But before they line up, Serge Gnabry is out through injury. He suffered a muscular injury. Do not expect to see him in this game. Lucas Chavedia had a thigh injury. Nonetheless, he's not the first goalkeeper anymore for this PSG side. Then Achraf Hakimi is out through a hamstring injury, as well as Quinton. Now, Matevi Safanov in goal, William Pacho, Marquinhos, then Nuno Mendes and Senima Yuru. Then that midfield, Warren Zaire, Emery, Vitinha, Joao Neves. Then Ousmane Dembele, Kivcha Kvaratskhelia, and Desli Doué would be my expected starting 11. If it does change, we'll have to wait and see, but that would be the ideal expectation. On the other side, for Bayern Munich, we have Manuel Neuer in goal, who, by the way, his contract is bound to be extended until 2027. He's 40 years of age, Manuel Neuer. But we know for a fact that players like Gianluigi Buffon are played for longer. So Konrad Laimer, David Upamecano, Jonathan Tah, Alphonso Davies. Now, we're talking about two players that the two centre-back pairings did not play over the weekend. They did when Bayern Munich were playing a 3-all draw against Heidenheim. So they had some of these players rested. Joshua Kimmich was one of those. Expect to see Alexander Pavlovich in that midfield. Jamal Musiala, of course, Michael Olise, Luis Diaz, and Harry Kane. But if it's not, we could also see a Josep Stanisic if Alphonso Davies doesn't start. Now, Alphonso Davies is one of those players, very talented, very good, struggles with injuries. It's very, very unfortunate for him that he has to go through it the way it happens for him. There are players whose talent you appreciate so much. I think yesterday I was seeing a piece of news. There's a Hull City player who returned after 10 months of nursing an anterior cruciate ligament injury. That's the ACL. And then just minutes upon coming back, he suffered an ACL in the other leg. I mean, how unfortunate does life have to be? How cruel does the game have to be on one? You know, we've seen players like David Alaba at Real Madrid. He's going to leave the club. We've seen what has happened with Ferland Mendy. You know, he's every time in and out of the team. Look at what has happened to Alexander Isak in his debut campaign at Liverpool. Injury after injury, you know. Go back to players like Vasilik Abdiaby, and I'm talking about players that are really, really talented. Go back to players like Jack Wilshere. Go back to players like Luke Shaw. By this season, he struggled to play 20 games in a season through injury. Go back to players like Wesley Fofana and David Colwill. Very good defenders, but injuries are a thing. Richard James, yes, he's played much more football this season, but he's one of those players that tend to struggle with injuries. We're talking about brilliant players that are capable of doing big, big things in the game, but injuries have become an issue for them, you know. So we can only hope that Alphonso Davies. Now, on a good day, Alphonso Davies, he's one of those players that treads that wing like no other. Very, very good going forward, you know. So that midfield contest, I for one do think that midfield pound for pound, PSG's midfield is better or pips that of Bayern Munich. Defensively, maybe they got toe-to-toe, but we're talking about Nuno Mendes. And if Achraf Hakimi was available, some of the two best fullbacks we've seen over the last 2 years, then when it comes to their forward lines, I feel the Bayern Munich forward line is more lethal compared to that of PSG. You know, when you look at Luis Diaz is playing the kind of football that you'd play as though you're never going to get an opportunity to play it again. He's just brilliant. Michael Olise stealthily goes about his business. He's like a snake. You never see it coming because he can be quiet in the game because he's not a loud player. He's not a very physically imposing player, but he's very effective at what he does. Pops up in the right areas, has the dribbling skills, and he's often going to cause you havoc, you know? So there's a lot of that. He's a very, very good player that I think a lot of football fans enjoy to watch. When you look at his story, you know, I think he had a stint with Chelsea, went to the lower leagues. Crystal Palace picked him up, and Chelsea came in for him. They had a deal agreed with Crystal Palace. Player didn't budge. He chose Bayern Munich, and look, the rest is history. If Bayern Munich were to go on to win the UEFA Champions League and let's say France go deep in the World Cup, we would be talking about him in the realms of the Ballon d'Or. So that's how good he's been. That's how impressive he's been, Michael Olise. So very, very good player. I don't know what you guys have made of him, but for me, I find him really, really good. When you look at his numbers, particularly when you look at the league, when you look at the Champions League, they're good numbers. In the UEFA Champions League, thus far this season, he has 5 goals and 5 assists. That's a 10-goal involvement in 12 games played. He was suspended for one of the games. Kindly excuse the background noise if you hear the screams from the outside. Then, in as far as the German Bundesliga is concerned, he's already surpassed his numbers from last season, where he played 34 games. He scored 12 goals and provided 14 assists. That was a 26-goal involvement. As we speak today, he has a 34-goal involvement in 30 games, 14 goals and 20 assists. Now, tell me why that is not elite performance for a 24-year-old. Guys, I'm a Real Madrid fan. I look in that team and I do not see a right-sided player. I do not see a left-footed player that is worth the salt. Real Madrid, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Florentino Perez, do something. Anyways, you remember when we did that video about who I think is would be the perfect replacement for Mohamed Salah at Liverpool. He was first on the list because he's that good. Michael Olise, we looked at players like Lamine Yamal. Of course, that was more wishful than it is expected. We looked at players like Magnus Aklechau. He's at AC Monaco. We looked at what's the other guy's name? I'm trying to remember who the other guy's name was. There's that guy, Yan Diomande. Yes, Yan Diomande at RB Leipzig. Those are some of the players that we looked at. Very, very good players in terms of having the capabilities to come in and replace Mohamed Salah. I even hinted on Bukayo Saka. I don't think Liverpool come and get him, but if you're looking at players with potential, he's right up there. Then we looked at players like Bradley Bacola, but we will wait to see. Sino Bono says, luckily, I didn't bet on Arsenal to going to the final. Sino Bueno. Guys, for those of you that are not regulars on the channel, Sino Bueno made a bet with he's a Chelsea fan. He made a bet with his cousins or brothers. If Arsenal win the Premier League, he's supposed to tint his hair red. Red to mean the red jersey for the Arsenal. So he's saying he's lucky he did not place a bet on Arsenal advancing to the final. Then Milton says, Robert, who will be the favorite for the UEFA Champions League now? Now, I've already said this. Out of the 4 teams that were left at the semi-final stage, Bayern Munich have always been the outright favorites for me. There's a reason as to why they have 6 accolades of the competition. And then second to them is PSG because they won it last year, but also because they're a very, very good team. They're a very, very brilliant team. But now that Atletico de Madrid are out of the window, then Arsenal, then Atletico de Madrid. But now Atletico de Madrid are out of the window. The reason somebody asked me the question, who would you rather Arsenal play in the final? I said PSG. Not because PSG are weak, not because PSG are easier to beat than Bayern Munich would be. No, it's because, I've said this before, I do not remember the last time, if any, in the history of the UEFA Champions League, forget the European Cup, but the UEFA Champions League, when a first-time winner came back the subsequent season and won it again. I've seen only a few first-time winners, like Manchester City in 2023. Have they won it again? Not yet. They had played the 2021 final. PSG played the 2020 final, lost to Bayern Munich, and they came back in 2025 and won it. So they would stand to be the first team that wins it the first time and defends it in quick succession. Go back to Chelsea in 2012. How many years did it take them to win it again? From 2012 to 2021. Okay, so Milton says Arsenal versus Bayern Munich or PSG. Of course, Mature Man says PSG. He would rather PSG goes in the final. So that's the hope. Or that will be maybe. I mean, it's a kind of situation where you're being asked which one is the better of two hands. They're both equally important. So PSG and Bayern Munich are both difficult teams to beat. But Bayern Munich and all their pedigree and that attacking line, I feel there's more to Bayern Munich in terms of pedigree than PSG can bring to the table. But more, it is about that myth that I have, that a first-time winner really, really struggles to defend that crown. Therefore, if PSG make it to the final, luckily, maybe out of luck and out of hard work, Arsenal can then get it over the line. Okay, Adrahman Mohammed says Bayern Munich will be the other team, will go to a final to Budapest. That is his prediction. Thank you so much, Abdurrahman. Then Sino Bueno says Munich 12 was the best final. Their country, their city, their stadium, but our cup. I mean, it doesn't happen very often that you get to host a final, play it in your own stadium, and lose it. But for Chelsea to win that final, remember they had lost the 2008 final. So first of all, I also don't remember the last time, or if any time, where a team qualified for, and this is not in the history of the European Cup, I'm talking about Champions League era, where a team made it to their first ever final and straight away won it. Usually, you make it to your first final and lose it, and then you come back the next time and then win it. Dennis Backamp 7040 says they might Arsenal. Congratulations, Team Arsenal, for the final. Now, go and pray in your whatever language you know best. Go and if you're a believer. But whatever it is you believe in, go and pray for your Arsenal team that eventually they win the UEFA Champions League. Why? One of the reasons as to why Arsenal need to win the UEFA Champions League is for their fans. Because one, of course, obviously, they've never seen their team win it. But every time I've had Arsenal fans in an argument with either of these teams, Man City, Chelsea, Manchester United, but more importantly, Chelsea and Man United, usually the final card the final roll of the dice is that reminder of you've never won the Champions League. That's usually what shuts down the debate. Whatever the context, whatever the case. If you have a heated argument with an Arsenal fan, and you're a Manchester United fan, you're a Chelsea fan, even if you're a Nottingham Forest fan, even if you're an Aston Villa fan. You remember when Arsenal went to play away to Aston Villa, and Aston Villa paraded their Champions League trophy in the way leading out of the tunnel. If you're arguing with a Liverpool fan, usually that's the last roll of the dice. You've never won the UEFA Champions League. So, and it often sends Arsenal fans quiet, mute, because it's a statement of fact, and there's no comeback to it oftentimes. So that's why, or in part, you'd want Arsenal to win it. But they must deserve to win it. Will UEFA Champions League 2006 repeat itself? I mean, history has had evidence of repeating itself. If you're an Arsenal fan, you would hope it doesn't, but history has done that. In other words, you're saying Arsenal get a red card in the final, they lose by 2-1. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. None of us is tall enough to see what's in the future. Mature Men says, even if we do not win the Champions League, we are better than 99% of European teams. I mean, I don't know in what context you mean that, but if you're talking about brand and a global appeal, there's no doubt that Arsenal is a very globally appealing brand. Yesterday, we were having a chat with Ash. Ash is a Tottenham Hotspur fan, and she said, based on her online interaction, everywhere she goes, there seems to be an Arsenal fan in every forum. And he said, maybe Arsenal has more fans than Manchester United. And I argued against that perhaps she's playing with such a very small sample space that it may be giving her the wrong conclusions. But also, the nature of social media is that if you interact with Arsenal people more, then they will give you more of Arsenal people. If you interact with Man United people more, then they will give you more of Man United people. So there's those dynamics to it, But the two sides are very, very globally appealing sides. But I must acknowledge that United have the bigger fan base when it comes to the globe. But with the context of brand appeal, I would certainly understand where you're coming from. So, guys, what is your prediction for Bayern Munich versus PSG? Let me put here a poll question: Bayern Munich versus PSG. Who do you think is going to make it to the final? Who will make it to the final? I need your answers. Down, one is Bayern Munich because they are the home side. Two is PSG. It's not the kind of a poll question where you can have a draw. No, it cannot be a draw. So you have the poll there. Do let me know who you think is going to go through in as far as that game is concerned. People vote on that poll. Let's vote on that poll. But as you vote on the poll, please leave me a comment down in the comment section in regards to your individual prediction for the game. I, for one, went 3-2 in favor of PSG. The scoreline may not even be that big. But at the time of making that prediction, I still said our still tone are still not very conclusive. Maybe 2-1 PSG. But I just have this feeling maybe I'm wrong. And I hope I'm not, that PSG could advance. There's been a bit of a trend. Other than, I think, let me see. I'm trying to remember. I think other than Sporting Lisbon at the round of 16, I don't remember a team in these knockout phases, starting at the round of 16 onwards, that lost the first leg, that advanced to the next stage, other than Sporting CP against Bordeaux Glummot. So unless you know of any, please remind me. Okay. Sino Bueno says, not gonna lie, I feel Mikel Merino is fit. Arsenal will definitely. You feel if Mikel Merino is fit, Arsenal will definitely win it. Mikel Merino is one of the players that Arsenal have missed. You see, the thing about Mikel Merino is like the thing about having a partner. And I'm talking about straight people here. If you're a man and you have a wife, if you're a woman and you have a husband or a boyfriend, whichever way you define your relationship, sometimes you never appreciate the significance or the importance of those people in your life until they walk out of it. So, similarly, there had been an underappreciation of Mikel Merino in this Arsenal squad and team until he got injured. There's so many games they played in between, ever since he suffered that injury, that he thought if they had a Mikel Merino, perhaps they would have gotten that one over the line, that they would have won that fixture, So, apologies if you do not find the example very becoming, but I thought it was the closest that I could bring up. Mr. Milton says, I think home team advantage. Well, there's that too. Home team advantage, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's going to be a very hostile environment for PSG inside that Allianz Arena. Those Bayern Munich fans are going to be really, really loud. And we know German fans are really, really passionate. One of the environments that I really appreciate on a UEFA Champions League night, but also dread if it is my team playing there, is that environment inside the Signal Iduna Park. Those guys can cheer on their team, regardless of whether they are winning, whether they are losing, whether they are drawing. They chant their team on. They urge their team on. And for the first time, in as far as my memory can reflect on, I thought yesterday that Emirates Stadium, that's the best environment they've had in years. Of course, I only compared it to one moment when Rich Nelson scores that winning goal against FC Bournemouth. And when you go back to, I think, the 2022-2023 campaign, when they're chasing down when they're trying to compete for the Premier League title. But that in itself was a one moment kind of thing. It was a total bedlam in that stadium. But yesterday you felt it was literally the whole game, the entirety of it, you know. Okay. Machua Men says, I think they told PSG to lose the Club World Cup so an underdog team can win the competition and viewership and trip for the new competition can increase. I mean, that's too big a conspiracy theory to have. I do not buy into that. I mean, what benefit would PSG have in losing it? In the context of the game itself, that Chelsea won by 3-0, I thought Chelsea were the better team. They were really, really brilliant. And I remember in the build-up to that game, if you have the patience of digging so deep into... Guys, we only have 3 votes. Well, why do we only have 3 votes? And 2 of you are saying the Champions League, Bayern Munich are going to go through, and 1 of you is saying PSG. Somebody, guys, vote. Check out that poll question and vote. I mean, I remember if you have the patience to peel through back to the lives I made back at the time prior to that final, I said that if Chelsea wanted to beat PSG, they needed to have an extra man in midfield. And what Enzo Maresca did was to play Moises Caicedo alongside Richie James in that midfield. And then he pushed Cole Palmer to the out wide. And they had a really, really good game. Tactically, it was such a good game to watch. The Blue Baron says, which country? Uganda. Thanks for asking. Small landlocked country in the eastern part of Africa called Uganda. Neighbors are Kenya, Tanzania, South Sudan, DRC Congo, and Rwanda. Those are the countries with whom we share a border with, in case you're wondering. So then, okay, I think I've read all your comments thus far. So I thought Chelsea just had a brilliant game. Go back and reflect on it or watch the replay. I mean, it's okay. We know that the evils are there in the game, but I wouldn't be quick to think of it that way. Basically, the Pearl of Africa. Yes, the Pearl of Africa, as coined by Sir Winston Churchill. AFTV were here not too far back. That was at the tail end of April. And I saw, I think, was it Robbie Lyle, reaffirming those words that he now understands why he called it as such. It's such a beautiful place. They had the pleasure of touring around the place, going to the Bwindi impenetrable forest, doing a 10-12 hour journey to go see those mountain gorillas. Okay, I think I've read all the comments. So basically, you guys have not given me your predictions, but we should expect a very, very good game. Whichever way it slices, I think, yeah, Bukayo Saka was asked the same question. Who would he rather they have in the final? And obviously, he cannot tell you as the media, but he said they know who they want. In other words, it's something that they would have discussed in amongst themselves as players to say, if we were to make it to the final, who would you rather we face? Just like you and I, they also get to have these conversations. They are as human as we are, so they get to have these conversations. You know, people relish what they relish. Machuamen says, Ban defense and goalkeeping is so bad. Okay, that's your assessment. Is it as bad? I mean, Manuel Neuer on a good day can be a nightmare. Remember, he was man of the match in their 2-1 victory at the Santiago Bernabeu before they won the reverse fixture, for which after the red card, the game turned on its head with Luis Diaz scoring and Michael Olise eventually, as Bayern Munich won the tie 4-3, 4-2. It could be either of Bayern Munich or PSG. Yes, Milton, it could be either of them. The question is who? Who are you predicting is going to be there? We know it's either of the two, but in your individual assessment, or whether wishfully or objective or otherwise, who would you rather see in the final to face off with Arsenal? We know one team is already there. We know one team is already there. Who else would you rather see in the final? So, anyways, okay. As I wait for your submission, guys, allow me to drift away from the UEFA Champions League. Chelsea are in the hunt for the manager. They made contact with Xavi Hernandez's camp, but looks like for now they're not moving forward. Towards which club do you support? Oh, Arsenal, Real Madrid. Those are the two clubs I support. But oftentimes I root for the underdog against a big opponent. Yeah, those are the clubs I support. Now, I was telling you about Chelsea news. Chelsea are out there searching for a manager. They did reach out to Xavi Hernandez, but looks like for now they will not be advancing with him. And multiple reports suggest that they are seriously considering Andoni Iraola, Marco Silva from Fulham. Remember, Andoni Iraola is going to leave Bournemouth at the end of the season. And then Xabi Alonso are some of the candidates that they are seriously considering for that vacant role. Mosinguzi Evans says, congratulations to us Arsenal fans. Congratulations to you indeed. Should Jose return to Real Madrid? I've given my thoughts about that. For those of you that care not to be troubled, please go over to the channel. Under the video section, I did a whole video about that, whether Jose Mourinho should return. Now, the challenge is, and allow me look at it in this perspective. First of all, Real Madrid are in need of a head coach / manager. Two, they have set themselves tough conditions. That one, they want somebody that is very respected. Two, somebody that is a serial winner. Three, somebody with experience. Now, when you look at that pool of coaches, there are not many in that basket. In that bracket, you're going to put in managers or coaches like Pep Guardiola, Jose Mourinho, Jurgen Klopp, maybe Thomas Tuchel, and who else? Unless you want to sneak Didier Deschamps in that realm just because he won the 2018 World Cup and guided France to the subsequent final of the World Cup. But, it is something like that. So, Sino Bueno says, Chelsea's a Chris Mubiru. Really? Oh, you say Chelsea need Chris Mubiru. So, basically, for Real Madrid, that pool of experienced managers, serial winners and very respected guys is very small. Of course, Carlo Ancelotti belongs to that sort of bracket, but Carlo Ancelotti is out of the window. You do not expect that it's going to be brought back. Just very quickly, a return to Zidane seems very distant. Why? Because he's bound to take over the French national team job after the World Cup. So, and then in the Class B, you have the likes of Maximiliano Allegri. Very good guy. He's a winner, but he's never won the Champions League. In that same bracket, you have the likes of Antonio Conte. Very good manager for the short term, not very good for the long term. Not that Real Madrid would care about short term or long term, but he's never won the UEFA Champions League. Then in that same bracket, you have You have managers like who? I'm trying to remember. Mauricio Pochettino would be in that bucket. He's never won the Champions League, but I would put him in that bucket. Then you also have a Group C bracket where you have these young, promising managers. Some have won something, some are yet to win anything. Cesc Fabregas, Xabi Alonso, Mikel Arteta, those kinds of managers, Oliver Glasner, Enzo Maresca, put all of them in that bracket, whichever other name you want to add on, So you have those three categories, but Real Madrid want to fetch in the top pool. So if you're not getting Jurgen Klopp, because I don't know why he's not highly being approached, but at one time I remember he came up sometime during the season and said, yes, the rumors have been there, but he's not been approached, or any of his representatives have been not approached to the effect of taking over. And I think he said something that if he had to take over, he would go to Atletico de Madrid. For the benefit of the competition in the Spanish La Liga, I would rather Jurgen Klopp goes to a team like Atletico de Madrid as opposed to Real Madrid, because if it goes to Real Madrid, we end up in the same space that we've always been. It's a Barcelona-Real Madrid affair, And then, of course, you would put Hansi Flick in that pot A, But, Pep Guardiola is not going to go to Real Madrid. They're not going to go and poach Hansi Flick. So they're not going to go back to Carlo Ancelotti. So that means in that very small pool, already 3 are out. Zidane is in. I put him in that pool. They're not going to go for him. Then that leaves you with Jose Mourinho. That leaves you with which other option? Jurgen Klopp. Who else that you want to think of? I don't know who else you want to think of, but whoever may come to mind. So you can see the options are very limited, and therefore I understand their inclination to retreat back to what is more familiar, in the sense of the devil is better than the angel you don't know. But if they want to go to Pool B, I think the Florentino Perez has an appreciation for Mauricio Pochettino, but he thinks that Jose Mourinho is the guy. And then also, if you want to tame egos in that dressing room, I do not think you get a better manager than Jose Mourinho. He loves it. He loves it when he can put a player in his place. He loves it when he can put a player in his place. And he will not care who you think you are. Okay. All right. Sino Bueno says, okay, I read that comment. I think Chelsea need a manager who plays a 3-4-3. Why do you think they need a manager that plays a 3-4-3? I mean, systems are systems. I've said Chelsea, if Chelsea can be humble enough to themselves, they can go back to Mauricio Pochettino after the World Cup and say, guys, look here, we were wrong to part ways with you, but we are back. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation. And they have a chat with him, because their parting of ways was not alarming. It was sort of out of mutual respect due to a difference in strategy or approach. So they can go back to him. Xabi Alonso, good candidate. Then Andoni Iraola is a very good coach. But the thing about Chelsea, I've said this, they need to streamline their business. For as long as you have 5 sporting directors, for as long as you have owners that keep interfering with the work of the head coach, for as long as the medical department sees itself above the head coach or manager, you're going to have troubles. You're going to struggle, and that kind of thing. West Ham will be the most trickiest match for Arsenal. This is a do or die situation for them. I think it is for both teams. Why? For Arsenal, it's the Premier League title at stake. For West Ham, it's their Premier League status on the line. Now, West Ham have been relegated before. Not that if they got relegated today, it will be a good thing. Oh, are we back on? Let me know if you guys can hear me. Let me know if our audio is back. Okay, good. My first mic ran out of battery. Good. Hi, Summer. The microphone ran out of battery. But okay, like I was saying, Chelsea need to streamline their hierarchy, their business. You cannot have your owners, your medical team sort of interfering in the work of the head coach. First of all, the owners, Egbari, Todibori, and their partners need to be at sort of board level in a way, or chairman level, whichever you may define it as such. Then have a CEO, have a technical director / head of football / sporting director, whichever the title is. Have a head of recruitment, and then have the head coach / manager. Now, every time the Todibodis want answers, these are the guys that bring you the answers. CEO sits with first of all, head coach, manager sits down with the sporting director, head of football, director of football. They discuss the team, the kind of direction they want to take, the kind of football that they want to see on the pitch, etc. Talk about player recruitment, what players need to go out, what players need to come in. And then that business, of course, the CEO is involved. Then that sort of managerial cohort go to the owners. But the interaction between owners and manager should be there, but not very often, not very constant. Even when you're a hands-on manager, usually when you're hands-on, when you do micromanagement, oftentimes you're going to interfere. You're going to be calling the manager to ask, why is player so and so not playing? Let the manager have the autonomy to do the thing that he feels is right for the team. So Chelsea need to streamline that bit, because even if you bring in a Pep Guardiola with all the interference and the whole environment around Chelsea, he may not succeed. So they need to iron that out. You cannot have 5 sporting directors. Why? Because each and every one is going to be pulling in their own direction. Everyone wants to have the bigger ear of the owner in terms of being listened to. And then when it comes to player recruitment, every sporting director has an agent somewhere who is seeking a favor for this sporting director to look at their player. They're looking for a favor. Chelsea are recruiting young players. Why don't you take a look at mine? I'll send you the clips. And then before you know it, this one of the sporting directors is rooting for that player. Why? Because there's a direct benefit for them. So Chelsea need to streamline their business. But I hope I've answered your question well, Sino Bueno. Okay. Raymond Kangumba says, hi, Arsenal versus Atletico Madrid. Arsenal are in the final. I am happy Arsenal are in the final. Arsenal in the Champions League trophy. Raymond Kangumba wishes for Arsenal to win the UEFA Champions League, and he thinks they will go on to win it. Why Arsenal is so hated for no reason? I don't think they are hated for no reason, but I know for a fact that they are hated. You see, I don't think there's a person who doesn't have anything to them that is hated. Usually, there's that one good thing or more that you have about yourself that other people admire that may cause them to be envious of you or hate you. I've been in a couple of conversations about this, and some people make the argument, oh, Arsenal fans bring it on themselves in terms of being hated, what, they are so talkative. I feel that all football fans are talkative. For as long as they are talking about their team and singing praise of their team, they're very talkative. They're braggadocious of their own teams. Do some fans take it a notch higher? I'll give you an example. 9 out of 10, actually 9.5 out of 10 times when Raymond Kangumba shows up here, he's talking about Newcastle, regardless of the topic. So today, he's talking about Arsenal. But why? Why does he constantly talk about Newcastle? He's a Newcastle fan. It's his team. That's what he wants to talk about. When Chelsea fans come on here, largely they'll ask me questions about Chelsea. Something happens for Man United. Something happens for Liverpool. When Ash is here, she talks about Tottenham Hotspur largely. So when Arsenal fans talk about their team, I don't know what happens. But it was Micah Richards who said, when it's to do with Arsenal, everybody feels the need to talk. Everybody feels the need to say something. When Arsenal does something, it's looked at in a certain way. I don't know. I'll give you an example. We used to brag in school that the Queen, may her soul rest in peace, Queen Elizabeth II, that she used to support Arsenal. Remember when she invited Arsenal to the Buckingham Palace and that kind of thing. But anyways, jokes aside. So there's that about Arsenal. I cannot definitively tell you why, but there's an element to it. And then also Arsenal fans sometimes rub it in. They constantly remind people of that unbeaten run of 2003, 2004. Okay. Beliat says also Arsenal fans claiming Saka better than Messi. Yeah, that hate is valid. I mean, any Arsenal fan. Now, guys, you ought to look things in this perspective, and because it's very common in the world of football. Separate statements of banter or trivial statements from statements of fact. I'll give you an example. I cannot sit somewhere and I'm listening to somebody convincing me of how Saka is better than Messi. No. I'll be dishonest to my intellect just as much I would be dishonest to my own time. It's not even a discussion worth having. The two are not in the same bracket. We're talking about the greatest of all time versus a player who has had a mark on his team, but it is not finite because he's yet to win anything major with that team. Until he does so consistently, season in, season out, maybe we can, at a certain point X, we can entertain the conversation, But no, they cannot be in the same statement. So let's just be honest. So and by the way, some of the I took note. Some of these debates are instigated by non-Arsenal fans just to cause, let's say, chatter and outrage, and we call it engagement online. So somebody will pop up randomly and say Noni Madueke is better than Michael Olise, and then you see a lot of chat about that. But as soon as I read that, I know for a fact it's not a statement of fact. So I won't waste my time with it. Hi, you say PSG versus Bayern Munich. Sorry, Bayern Munich versus PSG in the Champions League final. It is Bayern win for the Arsenal. Okay. In what he's trying to say is that Bayern Munich will advance to the final. Now, according to our poll, Bayern Munich versus PSG, who will make it to the final? 7 votes have been cast. 57% of you think that Bayern Munich will make it to the final. That means 4 people have voted for Bayern Munich to go to the final. Really, 3 have voted for PSG. So, guys, let me see. Pedri, Chipes, TT Vision, Ateba Gaming, Alex Alnaife, my colleague, shout out to you. Sasa, Mr. Milton, Bruhidi, then Sino Bueno, Mr. Milton, Machuamen, Abdul Rahman, Dennis Barkamp, who else? The Blue Baron, then who else? Okay, Sama 619, and then Raymond Kangumba, and then Beliat. Thank you so much for having been part of this morning broadcast. It's been a pleasure having this with you. It's been nice doing this with you. I hope you have a great day. Allow me go and do other Football Tribe UG work. I have a video to edit. Should be premiering before, possibly before midday or around midday. It's going to be about Arsenal. And then, yeah. But also, forget not to check out the videos on the channel. Yesterday, we did put out a video about the Premier League title race. Then, a couple of days back, we spoke about Michael Adrian Carrick and Manchester United. So all those videos are available on the channel. You can go and watch them. Leave a comment, leave a like, share. Machuamen says, most people who say Saka better than Messi are not even real Arsenal fans. They are just trolling Arsenal. Exactly. Exactly. So, in other words, you must have the discernment to see through that to avoid what is not real talk. Thank you, Robert. I saw one of your videos. Much appreciated. For those of you that spare the time to watch our videos, thank you so much. Forget not to leave a comment, your views and thoughts under those videos whenever you get the chance to watch them. Otherwise, allow me wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Let's meet at night for the Bayern Munich PSG game. I cannot guarantee that I'll come at the start of the game, but most probably maybe after halftime because our broadcast starts at 11 p.m. Really, the game is going to start at 10 p.m. So keep it glued on the Football Tribe UG channel. Keep the conversation going. Keep supporting. Thank you so much for your time and dedication. I know there's thousands of other places you'd be other than here, but you choose to be here. So I do not take it for granted. Much appreciated for the continued love and support. May God bless you in your respective endeavors. Bye-bye for now. Till next time. See you later.